Now, later on this evening, Parliament will vote once again on whether to have a snap election. What's different this time? Are MPs likely to change their mind, do you think?
Nothing is different, Karen. It'll be exactly the same outcome. The government will lose once again, and then a few hours later, because they can't get back that control of Parliament or get the election they so desperately want, the government of Boris Johnson will shut down Parliament for 5 weeks. And just going back to John Bercow, one of his last acts here, because they're still battling away. This is with the shutdown of Parliament, they've just got a few hours now to continue their Brexit battles. One of the last acts of the outgoing Speaker, John Bercow, was to allow challenges to the government, first ordering the Prime Minister to come forward and say that he would accept the new law making it illegal to crash out of the European Union without a deal, and also the publication of the so-called Yellowhammer report, a government report that has yet to be published, outlining the damage that could be caused to the economy should Britain leave without a deal being agreed with the European Union. So they're in there battling it out, but they've got a matter of hours to go before the whole place is shut down.
Let's talk a bit about this new bill. The Queen gave royal assent to the bill, I believe, today. If there is no deal, is Boris likely to write to the EU to request an extension as the bill demands, bearing in mind that he said he'd rather die in a ditch?
Yes, I mean that's the point, and that's why the Labour Party want him to come forward and say he will obey the law, because there is all sorts of means by which the government is trying to slide out of this one. It is suggested, for example, that come the European Council summit on October the 17th, the Prime Minister will go there with one letter in one hand written by members of Parliament saying that they want an extension, and in the other hand a letter written by the government saying that they won't have anything to do with extending it. That's been described by some senior lawyers as an illegal act. It's quite possible too that they might simply say, I'm going to ignore this. Nobody as yet knows how he's going to get around the law and at the same time not concede to the demands of the law. So it's a fascinating period. Can you imagine what it would do to investment in Britain if it was seen that the Prime Minister of the country was ignoring the law of the land? It would crash overnight, I would imagine.
Can we talk a little bit about the European Union? It's not a given that they would accept any extension anyway. France has already indicated that it might not do this. So where does that leave the UK and Brexit?
Well, the French have been making sounds off for a number of times, and has got to be said that a number of European states are getting a little bit fed up with the antics here in the British Parliament and between the British government and other governments in the European Union. The reality at the end of the day, Karen, is that although crashing out of the European Union without any kind of transitionary agreement would be bad, according to a number of economic sources, for the British economy, it would also have an impact on a number of economies along the west coast of the European Union. So the reality is that to avoid that, particularly the damage done to the Irish economy, they would concede. They might come back and say, actually, we don't want you to extend it for 3 months, extend it for 6 months and get your act together. But the reality is, at the end of the day, they will likely come back and say, okay, we accept it, we'll give you an extension. They'll want to know what it's for, but they'll get it.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Richard. That was CGTN's Richard Bestick there on another dramatic day in the British Parliament. Moving on to other news now, to Hong Kong, where police say they have arrested 157 people. That was during the weekend protests, bringing the total number above the 1,300 mark. The demonstrations once again caused severe damage.
For 30 years, China has undergone unprecedented transformation. From its old industrial base in the northeast to its new manufacturing powerhouse in the southeast and to its emerging southwest. CGTN offers you a panoramic view of contemporary China. Our crews will travel along 3 different routes and come to you live from dozens of locations and 3 mobile studios. Join us for an all-inclusive look at China on our TV channel and digital platforms, September the 9th to the 20th. It is New China, then and now, in celebration of the 70th anniversary of the People's Republic of China, only on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
In South Africa, human rights lawyers and over 50 other organisations have formed a coalition to try to find meaningful ways to curb xenophobic attacks. Police reports confirm that 12 people have been killed during the recent outbreak of xenophobic violence, the majority of them being South African nationals. The new coalition will take to the streets on Saturday in protest against the attack. CGTN's Yolisa Njumela has more.
In addition to the 12 people who lost their lives following the recent xenophobic unrest, over 600 people have been arrested. During the attacks, foreign and local-owned shops were looted. A building and a truck were also torched. The looters went on a rampage in a number of areas in the Gauteng province, South Africa's economic hub. Ordinary South Africans, law enforcers and government officials have continuously condemned these attacks. Now, a coalition of over 50 organizations have also entered the fray. The People's Coalition Against Xenophobia comprises of trade union representatives, civil society organizations, community groups, and individual activists. Theirs is a call to action to stop the attacks.
Enough is enough. This has to come to an end. It's like every 4 years we find ourselves here. We find ourselves fighting this battle. And we cannot continue like this, not in our name. This cannot happen in our name as South Africans.
The organizations believe that the main targets of these attacks are working class fellow Africans.
For us, this is a working class struggle where we are seeing working classes fighting against each other and not directing the challenges at the root cause of the problem, which is the system we find ourselves operating under.
Stand united against xenophobia and gender-based violence, fighting for equal, safe and inclusive South Africa. The working class divided will never conquer. What is needed is sustained, rolling mass actions, and we are committing to building a mass movement against xenophobia, sexism, racism, and all forms of prejudices dividing and oppressing the working class and poor.
This coalition will take to the streets on Saturday in protest against the attacks. The riots seem to have been quelled for now. Police officers have maintained a heavy presence in Johannesburg, looking out for any possible eruptions of xenophobic riots. Earlier on Monday, the presidency released a statement imploring the law enforcement agencies in this country to be vigilant and be firm in dealing with the perpetrators of these attacks and essentially restore law and order in this country. Yolisa Njumela for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Here in Kenya, the discovery of oil in Turkana County is carrying the hope of millions of Kenyans. The oil find is expected to go a long way towards financing reforms and development of sectors in the country's Vision 2030 agenda. CGTN's Daniel Arapmoy visited Turkana County, where it's hoped that revenue from oil will open up Turkana, a region that has largely been ignored.
For many years now, residents of Turkana County have walked the dust balls of Lokichar, where temperatures can soar up to 40 degrees centigrades. People in this part of Kenya have fought and won many battles with famine. Life in this remote, dry part of Kenya cannot be for the faint-hearted. But despite the difficulties, many residents of Turkana County are optimistic about the oil find in their region, living each day with the hope that good tidings will spread across their land as oil begins to flow.
We are actually happy about the exploration of oil in Turkana County. It is actually one of the major hopes that the Turkana person who has been a pastoralist, who has been in the world of suffering, lack of water and what, we had banked a lot of hopes into the issue of the exploration of oil.
We believe that when you have oil, everything will be okay. Everybody will have cash of their own.
We ask God to bless us with more oil finds and other natural resources that we need.
The benefits of the oil find in Turkana has already started trickling in, with Lokichar town acquiring a few kilometers of tarmac road. Some residents were also lucky to find employment, especially during the early days of exploration.
On the side of jobs, we have had some casual labor offered to many of us, especially during the exploration period, despite being short-lived.
But many insist they would like to see a win-win position when it comes to sharing of oil revenue in their county.
The needs of the Turkana people should be prioritized, and if that is done, then it will go a long way in solving their problems.
The oil find in Turkana is expected to improve infrastructure across Kenya and also provide much needed amenities like clean water supply and hospitals.
As residents, we are still waiting. Maybe the benefits will come later.
The Turkana local government has already struck a deal with the national government on revenue sharing. As it will take 20% of the revenue, the local community will take 5%, while 75% will go to the national government. But with uncertainty still shrouding the entire oil find in Turkana, only time will tell if this oil find is the silver bullet that will transform this region for good. Daniel Arab Moy, CGTN, Lokichar, Turkana County, Kenya.
Well, joining us now in the studio for more perspective on all of this is Ken Gishinga, Chief Economist and CEO at Mentoria Economics Kenya. Thank you very much for joining us. Kenya has already sold off nearly 1.2 billion shillings worth of this crude oil. What do you think will be the immediate benefit for the local communities in Turkana, if any?
Well, according to the revenue sharing bill, in the petroleum bill, the revenue is going to be split 75% to the national government, 20% to the county government, and 5% to the local community. So that 1.2 billion shillings, we should expect to see about 240 million shillings or $2.4 million going to the county government, which would be fantastic because the county can use that for schools, for healthcare, and top it up with what it gets from the national government.
So we already know what the amounts are. You said 5% to the local economy. As we know, there was a lot of delay at first caused by a standoff over sharing of this revenue between the oil company, the government and local people. Have all of these issues now been resolved?
All the issues have been resolved. Back in May last year, 2018, there was an agreement before the Petroleum Act 2019 was drafted, and the issues that had been building up because there was a feeling that the local communities were not getting enough. So first the money part was resolved, but even more than that, the local content issues were resolved because of the issue of local labor. Can they utilize local labor in the value chain, especially coming from the Turkana county, because unemployment is very high in that county. That was also resolved. So expect now to see some form of prosperity coming into that county.
So they're happy with the 5%, and of course there'll be more employment in that area.
Absolutely.
Right, with oil riches, obviously it's not just going to benefit local people. There will be other countries wanting to take an interest in all of this. How is this likely to impact on Turkana County and indeed Kenya as a whole?
All that depends on the legal instruments. And one thing I'm very happy about is the legal instruments have been put in place. If you look at Nigeria, for example, or if you look at Angola, the lack of that strategic planning has led to some form of chaos. I think for Kenya moving forward, the revenue sharing part has been agreed upon, but I think we need to ask harder about having a local refinery in Kenya. I know they have said it's not commercially viable, but they've not given excellent reasons on why that's not the case. Because if you look at Nigeria, a lot of the oil is exported and they have to buy refined oil from abroad. If Kenya can find a way of escaping that particular chapter, I think it would be a major success.
Okay, well, there's been obviously a lot of excitement about all of this and the first sale of crude oil from Kenya. How long do you think it will be until Kenya can officially belong to the League of Oil-Producing Countries, would you say?
Well, it's already part of that, but you're right, this is part of an oil exploration scheme. When the first 200,000 barrels were put into the Celsius rigger, which was a ship that took the oil to Malaysia, there was a lot of excitement, but a lot of people forget that this is still part of a trial experiment. It might take up to 2022, some say 2024, because also it depends on the prices of oil. Right now we are talking about $60 a barrel for Brent crude, but the question is, what's the 5-year outlook in terms of pricings, because that's what affects the viability. If the outlook on oil is very bearish, then it might dampen these prospects. But if the outlook is quite high, you might see more players coming in to invest in the industry.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Early days yet, but an exciting new development, certainly for Turkana County. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
That was Ken Gishinga there, Chief Economist and CEO of Mentoria Economics in Kenya. Moving on to other news now. Well, the Chinese embassy in Ethiopia, the Ethiopian Ministry of Science and China, New China. We sent our reporters to 3 different areas of the country to review the tremendous changes that they've gone through over the years since the founding of the People's Republic of China in 1949. So the team on our southeast route were today in Sunyi, the city which hosted the famous 1935 Sunyi Conference during the Long March. The northeast route in China's old industrial base gave us a glimpse.
Human capital development is also one of the biggest areas where we want to work further. So far, we have been enjoying scholarship programs from China, and we've been sending staff members of our universities, especially from public universities, to go abroad to China, to different universities there and do their master's and PhD programs. So this means a lot.
China started to receive African students as early as 1956 and has been increasing the scholarship year by year. Since 2015, the Chinese government has been providing around 10,000 scholarships to African countries each year. More than 400 African students get scholarships and go to study in China every year, and the number has been increasing.
Well, let's now take a look back at the opening day of our special series, New China. We sent our reporters to 3 different areas of the country to review the tremendous changes that they've gone through over the years since the founding of the People's Republic of China in 1949. So the team on our southeast route were today in Sunyi, the city which hosted the famous 1935 Sunyi Conference during the Long March. The northeast route in China's old industrial base gave us a glimpse into how border trade has played such an important part for people's livelihoods. Meanwhile, diverse cultures of the southeast were on display today.
It was here.
Now go to Ucha. She's got all the latest business news for us. Over to you.
Thanks, Karen. And coming up on Africa Live Biz. Up to 1,700 flights cancelled as British Airways pilots go on strike. And no respite yet in Zimbabwe as an economic crisis deepens.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to this sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Now, British Airways pilots are on a 2-day strike, leading to the grounding of nearly all its flights. At least 1,700 flights to and from London's Heathrow Airport and Gatwick have been cancelled, and thousands of passengers have been disrupted. Now, this is the first ever strike by British Airways pilots. They are demanding higher wages after the British Airline Pilots Association has called for more profit sharing. And the deepening economic crisis in Zimbabwe is causing widespread concern as a shortage in commodities such as fuel and electricity continues to persist. Despite the government's efforts to improve living conditions, many still believe there is a lot more to be done to curb hyperinflation. Here's CGTN's Brian Toussaint with the details.
The deepening economic crisis in Zimbabwe has rendered harsh living conditions for citizens. There is widespread poverty and unemployment. Some key factors, including the unavailability of running water and sufficient electricity, are hurting all sectors of the economy.
We are suffering here in Zimbabwe. We don't have water, we don't have electricity, even jobs. We don't have jobs here in Zimbabwe. We are suffering. As you can see, I'm just scruffy and dirty. We don't have water even to bath. We come here even at 2 a.m. dye the bowl to fetch water, so it's not easy life here in Zimbabwe.
In early 2019, Zimbabwe scrapped its official 1-to-1 peg between its quasi-currency bond note and the U.S. dollar, paving way for the transitional currency, the RTGS dollar. This also initiated the move by the government to ditch the multi-currency system and declare the RTGS dollar the sole legal tender. However, due to the increase in the cost of living, the bond note has not gained traction with Zimbabweans who still opt for the U.S. dollar as their preferred currency.
When we are buying products for sale, we use local bond note currency, and they don't accept coins. After finishing trading, I have to look for US dollars to get these potatoes, which I use to produce chips. These things are not really normal for businesses.
Lack of access to basic amenities is not the only concern for Zimbabweans. The country also faces shortages of commodities, which has driven inflation even higher. Fuel prices in the country have also skyrocketed, adding to price pressure, especially as rolling electricity cuts are forcing businesses to use expensive diesel generators to power their operations.
People spend anything between maybe an hour to 4 hours queuing for fuel. And what does that do on productivity? Because people are leaving their jobs to actually come into these queues. So I think, companies are actually losing out on productivity.
Many Zimbabweans have taken to the streets in recent weeks to express their discontent at the deteriorating economy. Hyperinflation has steadily increased despite austerity measures introduced by President Emmerson Mnangagwa being put in place. Brian Toussaint, CGTN.
Meanwhile, Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari is set to visit South Africa in October in a bid to reinforce ties between the two countries. The visit comes in the wake of deadly riots and xenophobic attacks in South Africa that led to the deaths of at least 10 people, including 2 foreigners. South African businesses abroad and especially in Nigeria have since become targets of retaliatory attacks, forcing them to remain closed. Now, President Buhari's visit is expected to aid in developing responses to the challenges in both countries following President Ramaphosa's discussion with Nigeria's special envoy. And shifting focus now, 5G telecom networks are 20 times faster than 4G. Now, the new tech is set to revolutionize the way we shop, the way we work, and the way we drive. In fact, just about everything. While a full 5G rollout may be some time off, it's already in action at one baseball stadium in South Korea, completely transforming the way fans can interact with the game. Here's Jack Barton reporting from Suwon.
There are cheerleaders and the expected raucous crowds at the KT Wiz baseball stadium just south of Seoul. Because it's South Korea, there are also robots serving drinks and ice creams. But what really sets this stadium apart is it's the world's first to go 5G. The app also allows fans to order food delivered straight to their seats as well as tickets, making long queues a thing of the past. And there's more, maybe.
Oh, strike again. I'm not sure which part of this is 5G, but it is a lot of fun.
Ticket sales have risen despite predictions by some they would fall. Organisers say it's because fans can now watch the game in full quality on their way to the stadium from work instead of missing the early innings. Some overseas clubs have been visiting to check out this technology, which also directly tracks the weather, ticket sales, seat occupation, spectator satisfaction, and a lot of other sales-related statistics. Though while 5G can offer a new viewing experience, it still can't stop the rain. Jack Barton at the KT Wiz Stadium in Suwon.
Well, that's all for now on Africa Live Biz, but coming up later on Global Business Africa, we'll delve further into the debate over whether Ethiopia should liberalize its exchange rate regime, especially after the central bank governor said that the country is mulling it over. All that coming up, top of the hour. For now, back to you.
Thank you very much, Ocha. We are going to a short break now. Don't go away. Lots more to come, including local event in South Africa targets increasing public exposure to contemporary art.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Let's now head to South Africa, where Joburg Art Week casts a spotlight on contemporary art. The annual festival showcases a programme of events bringing together both established and emerging artists. CG10's Yolisa Njumela has more.
Joburg Art Week celebrates the city's vibrant contemporary art scene. A large number of artists come here to show their work in the Joburg Art Week.
The Joburg Art Week model is inspired by the international project which seeks to encourage people to love and appreciate the contemporary arts.
The Art Week is also used to reinforce the existing strengths of the local art scene.
The platform is very much an open platform that features both the galleries that are more established institutions where the established artists will be in, but also emerging artists. It's kind of bringing new collectors in that way by engaging with artists personally and educating people, and also creating what we hope is unintimidating spaces for people to come and engage with art and artists.
This initiative aims to develop more points of contact between community arts organizations, informal initiatives, and the mainstream visual arts industry.
It's like you can see the unusual work from different artists. Not only the artists who who are in the galleries, but some of them who are still upcoming, who are given the challenge, the opportunity to exhibit their work. So that's what I love about Art Week.
Art Week has a lot of pop-ups happening, a lot of space activations that are not permanent, that are just like small interventions. So for small artists who don't necessarily have gallery representation.
A significant part of the Art Week project is the facilitation of events and activations in previously disadvantaged surrounding areas. Yulisa Njamela for City to N in Johannesburg, South Africa.
We've got all the sports news coming up for you after the break, including Kwagga Smith looking to be a surprise package for the Springboks despite less playing time.
Africa Live. Find your voice.